I was walking through the fix department the other day and picked up a case that I thought would be interesting. And to quote the seminal 80s alternative rock band, the Smiths, stop me if you've heard this one before. It's a 4-unit bridge, and you can see it goes from a cuspid, and then we've got the pontic space where the missing first bias, and then a second bicuspid, and then the molar. So it's a 4-unit bridge, and I know, wait for it, it's taken in a double arch tray, and you already knew I was going to say that. And that I was going to say it was in a plastic tray as well, which are, kind of flexible when we get down to things. And let's look at the preps real quick, because that's why the doctor was called. And when you look at the preps, you can see that things look fairly decent. There's kind of that deep hole on the distal of the molar, but you look around and you go, that doesn't look bad. And sometimes I just have to say this is a case where it was a little difficult for us to see. So let me show you the solid model here of where this started. And as we zoom in on this, you'll see a little less detail. We have some detail in parts, but that kind of disappears down. That molar doesn't look too great. That cuspid, I can see it on the lingual. But look at the margins, and this is one of those ones where we say, wow, we can't trim this ourselves. So we will pour it up, base it, and make the die cuts and send it back to the dentist. And this is how it comes back when the dentist has trimmed it. And so as you look at it, you get the feeling that, I like to refer to this as revisionist history sometimes, where you take a not so great impression, and then when asked to trim the dies, you trim them and you make them look really good. I used to be guilty of this too, don't get me wrong. I used to do this all the time. And what I would do is trim the dies the way I wanted the preps to look in the first place, even though it didn't quite turn out that way. And as a result, it does become kind of revisionist history when you do this. I find that if technicians are allowed to trim dies themselves, they're way less emotional about it than we are and tend not to make it look perfect. And so the doctor was called on these preps, not so much because of the preps themselves, because once they were trimmed, they looked fine, but there wasn't enough room for what the doctor wanted, which was a PFM bridge. And so the doctor was told to prep more and take another impression, which the doctor did. And again, in a double arch tray, and the tray came off while we were pouring it up afterwards. So that's not really what I want to point out on the impression, although it was done in a double arch tray. Again, it was the fact that we didn't have quite enough room to make this restoration. And it was a PFM, and when you look in there and we measure, and measured it already as we measure it. We can measure all this digitally now, by the way. And we have 0.7 millimeters of reduction there, and things are a little tight over here on the cuspid as well. And so the laboratory called the dentist and said, hey, you know what? We're fine on the bicuspid, and if you want to, if we can put a metal island, an occlusal island on the molar and a metal lingual, here we'll be fine with the PFM bridge. And he said, no, I told the patient that it was going to be all ceramic on the outside and there wouldn't be any metal showing. And so in order to do that, if we're going to make a PFM and not have any metal showing, we're going to need a little more reduction and another impression, a third impression with some more reduction. I'm starting to feel sorry for the patient at this point. And you can see why this isn't going to work well on a double arch tray. I mean, obviously, we just don't have that much reference. In fact, our cuspid guidance is been destroyed because we have the prep, so we're going to have to go off that lateral if we want to take this into any kind of excursive movements as we go back and forth. And what about when we go the other way? We really don't have contact with any other teeth here besides what you can see. And so as a result, we're stuck a little bit because we don't have a great opportunity to do any kind of functional excursions on here. So we asked for a little more reduction and another impression, and this is what came from the dentist on the third attempt. I haven't had this mounted yet to see what happened, because you can see the tray through the prep on the molar. That's the distal abutment for that bridge. And if we flip it over, again, the patient right there biting down right into that tray. It wasn't quite lined up, and of course I've made this mistake too. It's very easy to do, especially if you don't try in the tray a few times before you actually put it in. And then we have this, the molar behind it, which is kind of hanging off the end of the tray, and as you might guess, could probably distort pretty easily when poured up with some dental stone on a vibrator. And so I guess that we have enough reduction, because this is the second time the doctor has gone in and done additional reduction, and this is the third impression. So I do feel sorry for the patient. I'm not sure how this got out of the office. I can only assume that, I don't know, maybe an assistant took the impression, or the doctor took it and never looked at the tray itself, or asked the assistant how the impression looked, and he or she said good. It's hard for me to imagine how this could have happened. So again, this is one of those things where 1, 2, 3, 4 units, $4,000 bridge, pretty good body part replacement size here. I really feel like it's not asking too much to go to a full tray and an opposing full impression with a bite registration just right on this bridge. And obviously to get around under preparing, because this is the second time the lab's asked for more preps. And trust me, I was one of the #1 violators of this for the first 13 years of my career. And that's why I now use my reverse preparation kit from Axis Dental, because one of the things that it has on it, for example, is this little 2mm depth control burr. And so that's a 2mm shank that's off the end of that with the diamonds. That's why it has the 4 discs on it. You can see it says 2mm right there on the burr kit. And so as I'm getting ready to prep a PFM bridge like this, I will take this and I'll put a 2mm hole, 2 of them in fact, in the central groove of the tooth, and then I'll put 1 in the mesiolingual cusp tip, 1 in the distal lingual cusp tip, and I'll place 1 or 2 on the buccal cusp tip as well, even though the buccal cusp tip is very easy to see by pulling the cheek back with a mirror. But if I want to be sure, I'm going to put some 2mm depth cuts there, because by the time I reduce 2mm, and you can see that, you know, if you just look at it in your hand, it doesn't look like a lot, but that's a lot of reduction. But that's what it takes to have a PFM bridge that's got a porcelain occlusal on it and gives you the best chance of not fracturing. You might say, could the doctor have done a Bruxer bridge there? You could, but I still like PFM bridges more than I like Bruxer bridges. More so for molar replacement. I get scared about Bruxer bridges at times. And having enough connector size between the ponica and the abutment. But look at this. This is the 0.6mm reduction burr, and that's what we use for Bruxer crowns. And so I'll put a couple of those depth cuts in the central groove, and then a couple on the cusp tips, and then I prep till I can't see the holes anymore, and that's how I ensure that I've reduced enough. You know, you can use a 1mm or a 1.5 for Emax, even though Emax will do fine at 1mm, but it doesn't like to be thinner than that. And the 856-025 burr, the workhorse that I do most of the reduction with, and of course I always do my margins with a round burr because it makes it simple and straightforward to do. So once this doctor has prepped this for the first time and we ask for more reduction, the doctor really doesn't know where they are. They don't know how much reduction they've done and how much more they have to go. At least if you knew you had done 0.6 or 0.7 millimeters, you could do now a millimeter or something like that. If you looked at it, you're just guessing. And so when it comes time to reduce again and we get to this doctor's next preparation, how much more did the doctor take off? It's hard to say. It's hard to say how much more got taken off between here and here. You can see some differences when you look at the occlusal surfaces of the tooth, but it's difficult to say how much more was taken off. To me, it's just so easy to put some 2mm holes in the top of these teeth, and not in the incisal edge, I should say, on the cuspid, but in the central groove, 2mm holes, or here's an unprepped tooth, so we put a 2mm hole here and here. We wouldn't really need one in the distal lingual cusp tip because it's blown out, so we would put one here in these 3 and then prep until we didn't see it anymore. And then we've got 2mm of reduction. We know we're never going to get a call from the laboratory about that because no lab ever wants more than that. If you're afraid of the either a pulpal exposure because of previous occlusal wear, you can use the 1.5mm. At least that way they can still make you a PFM. With porcelain on the occlusal, it won't be as strong as the 2mm, but you could still do it with the 1.5mm. My point being, why guess when it comes to reduction? Use a depth cutting system. And again, if you want to see it in action, that's the reverse prep video at glidewelldental.com. Stop guessing, put some depth cuts in there, and if you're going to do a bridge or more than 1 or 2 single units next to each other, please consider the full arch impression so that we can have the best chance of giving you a bridge that's hopefully not going to only fit the preps very well, but in excursions, lateral excursions, protrusive, it won't need much adjustment either because we've got all those other unprepped teeth to go by.